Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our examination of Genesis. We already had an introductory discussion and we are following up with looking at the Genesis man. And so, what we're going to be doing is looking at this construction of the Genesis man. What we found when looking at Genesis 1:26 originally was that there was significant embellishment. And so when we take away all of that embellishment, the plurality with respect to the creator, this idea of being made in the image of the creator or remaking the creator in the image of man, when we take all of that away, we have a sense of this image that was created. And so that's what we're going to be looking at. What exactly was the nature of the Genesis man? Now, some individuals will insist that the Genesis man was a white man. Then you have others that insist that the Genesis man was a black man. Based upon the narrative and the deconstruction, the transliteration, that's not what we have. So we don't have a black man or a white man in terms of the image that was created according to this narrative. This is Dr. Tracy McCarthy. Let's get started. Now remember, there are two creation narratives in the book of Genesis. And so, with one situation, you have the creation of humanity as a whole, with male and female being simultaneously created in the narrative. Then there is a subsequent narrative that involves the creation of this entity known as Adam with a capital A. Now, both are identified as Adam, the lowercase a and the uppercase a. And so, talking about humanity in general, and then also this specific individual known as Adam. And so, when looking at some of the information about the creation of that individual entity, we get a more full picture of exactly what was created. And this is that excerpt that gives the impression that there is plurality with respect to the creator and that Adam was created in the image of the creator. And so you see this embellishment with in our image according to our likeness. Now, what remains after the embellishment is taken out is image. And so man was created as an image. And so we're going to see what that image is. Now, before we go into the specifics of this image, I want to point something else out, and it's about this idea of create. And so, with respect to this creating of Adam, there is an offering that creating Adam was also choosing Adam. So Adam was shaped and formed, but the word that is actually used there refers to choosing. And so what you're going to see is Adam was considered a chosen one. And here you see a little bit more deconstruction with respect to this idea of create. And so you see first choose, create, cut down, dispatch. Also create as in qualified. And so there's quite a bit going on here with respect to this creation idea. But what's standing out is this idea of choose. And going deeper into this idea of create, we see that Adam is understood as an elect one. In other words, a chosen one. Now, people are correct with respect to the assertion that there is a color associated with Adam. However, there is no yellow color mentioned in the book of Genesis with respect to Adam. There is no white color mentioned with respect to Adam, and there is no black color mentioned with respect to Adam. And so, no Amarillo, no Blanco, no Negro. And so this image that was created was not listed as one of these identities. And we're going to see exactly what was created. And so, what we find when deconstructing Genesis is that Adam, the original man, was the red man. And so, the entity that the individuals claim they found when they sailed to the Americas, that entity is understood as the prototype of the original man as described in Genesis. And we're going to look at how that breaks down and how this conclusion was determined. One thing to point out is when creating the individual man known as Adam, this entity was created from the dust of the earth, from the dirt, from the ground. And so this entity was created from what would be considered earth or clay or mud. And we're going to look at what that's all about in terms of the color of this clay, this dirt, or this mud, because of course, clay, dirt, and mud can come in a variety of colors. However, usually when people think about natural clay, they do tend to think about red clay, and that would be correct. And so this is an image of that red clay or that red dirt. It's also important to keep in mind that the word for all of that is Ifar. And so we've addressed Afar, Afair, Ifair before, and we know that it's related to this idea of covering and also of this idea of dust. And so what we find with respect to this type of dirt, this type of clay, is that it is red, and the word is Adom, Adom, and it means to be red, dyed red, red, ruddy. What's noteworthy is that Adam and Adom, one with the A and one with the O, these are synonymous, simultaneously meaning man and red, hence red man. But essentially, man is the same thing as red, according to this translation. These transliterations are quite diverse. What you see here for 120 in this particular instance is that this Adam is pronounced Hey Adame. And you can also see two individuals on the screen that present as the red man. You can see the redness coming through their skin. You might also note that in the Americas, Jamaicans often present as very red. And the red described in Genesis also correlates with the idea of the red metal known as copper. And so if you look on the right hand side, you can see these variations in terms of what copper looks like. You can also see these variations of red in the hair that is below the individual on the left hand side. And so you can see those variations of that copper color, that red color in the hair. And here you can see the men in Africa who are identified according to that word in scripture that refers to clay, that refers to dust, that refers to red. And you can again see this in their skin color. And so you might see it sometimes spelled Afar, Aphar, Apher, and then Epher. And here you can see both of these individuals have significant copper color to their skin. So now that we understand that the Genesis man is the red man, we're going to go on and look at some additional translations and transliterations with respect to this construct red. This Filipino translation of red is interesting because the word pula is very similar to another word by which the Fulani go by. And so the Fulani also have been identified as people with red skin. Now, in this instance, this is coloring that is put on the skin, but you can also see the redness that is in the skin without the coloring on the face. Another interesting pattern emerged with a number of languages, and the pattern involved red translating as Judas colored, Judas, Judas colored. And here you see Judas colored again in terms of this translation of red. And here you see some individuals with some of the older DNA that we are aware of on the planet. And these are individuals in South Africa. And so you can also see significant red in some of their skin. However, you do tend to see a little bit more yellow in the skin. But this is just another example of that red skin. And to the right, you see another example of skin that is significantly copper in color. Now we get to an interesting part in the translation. And so we are looking at Genesis 1:26 and this construct of red. What's noted is that a number of individuals who were initially identified as copper colored or red when individuals were sailing over into the Americas, those individuals have been reclassified from being the red man, and that has been replaced by them being referred to as the black man, specifically Negro. What's interesting, however, is that there are words in the Latin languages for red, and they are not the same words that you would use for black. And so what you have here, interestingly, is the red man, the original man, in the language that was originally used to refer to American Indians who were identified as copper colored. The word used to identify them was Negro. However, in that language that was used, the appropriate word to define what the people were seeing would have been Moreno, Morena, and Maroon. So what's also interesting about this referring to the red man as the black man is that by referring to the red man as the black man, it takes one away from connecting the red man with the original man in Genesis, where you clearly see that the person is identified as the red man. Now, of course, they had the language skills to identify the individuals correctly, but chose to reclassify them as black man, which is essentially a status that they were giving them, because if they were just going to be doing a descriptor, they would have stuck with red man. And you can see here that another word for that brownish crimson color is maroon. Another interesting thing to keep in mind with respect to the red man or the red people is that where the red people were found in the Americas, this is also the place where the HeLa cells have been found. This is also the place where that Perry Y haplogroup was located. And so there are some very interesting genetic dynamics going on in the land of the red man. I'm going to also point out something interesting that was discovered when looking at the red man in the context of this correlation with that A haplogroup and also with that HeLa cell dynamic. In addition to the red man being associated with the A and the HeLa cells, those immortal cells, what we also find is that this HeLa also comes up as an actual name of an individual. And what's interesting is that the individual has this sort of symbol for their name off to the right hand side, and you can see that there. We're going to look at where this particular symbol is found. It's very interesting because it looks like A, and then Hila or Hila. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care. See you soon.